Mostly the news around vaccines is good and getting better. There are more of them and more people are eligible to receive them. But after the AstraZeneca vaccine was paused this week, those who got their first dose of it have lots of questions. And all of us want to know, are we almost at the end of this? Here to help point the way in Guelph, Ontario, Dr. Kate Miller, family physician and an assistant clinical professor at McMaster University's Department of Family Medicine. And here in Ontario's capital city, Maria Sundaram, infectious disease epidemiologist at I.C.E.S, formerly known as the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences. And Tim Sly, professor emeritus at Ryerson University School of Occupational and Public Health. Hi to you all. Maria, I want to start with you. At first, AstraZeneca was safe and millions, especially in the UK, got vaccinated. Then after a few reports of rare blood clots in Europe, distribution was suspended and then it was deemed safe. And in Ontario, a bunch of Gen Xers, like myself, ran out to get the vaccine when the age limit was lowered, as those in the older groups weren't taking it. The message initially was get the first vaccine that you're offered. And then the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, NACI, said recently that if you prefer to wait and you're not a frontline worker, if you're not living in a hot zone, you could do that and get the vaccine that you wanted. And now Ontario has decided not to administer any more first doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. When you hear all that, how did we get to where we are right now?
I think that's a great question. And I especially when it's laid out like that, it's really clear that, someone not following this closely, someone who's not a vaccine epidemiologist like myself would look at this and go, well, people don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they want. And that's really quite far from the truth, but I understand how you would arrive at that conclusion. And so what we're trying to do is kind of explain the risk and the benefit of these vaccines in a changing environment. You mentioned how we rolled this vaccine out in the UK and we didn't identify any safety concerns among older people because this blood clot that's very rare is also even less common in older people. So as we ratcheted the age down, we saw the potential risk of that increase. But we also were administering this vaccine in an environment where there was really high community level transmission, especially here in the GTA. And so then it was kind of like this weighing of this risk and benefit where, there was a very small risk of this potentially serious outcome, but then the much greater risk of potentially being hospitalized for COVID-19. And we also know that COVID-19 has with it a risk of blood clots, not the same kind, but a higher risk of blood clot if you have COVID-19 versus if you get a vaccine. And so what we're kind of seeing is this really challenge of weighing this kind of risk and benefit.
The message that people heard was, get the first vaccine that you're offered. And a lot of people, ran out to get the AstraZeneca vaccine. And when the news came out this past week that it was being paused in Ontario, I think there was a feeling of we tried to do the right thing. And this blood clot is rare. But we did try to do the right thing. And now we just kind of feel, I don't know, maybe betrayed, maybe misled. Can you see why, for people who are not an epidemiologist, who might think that, the people in charge actually don't know what they're doing?
I can totally understand why people would feel that way. And I especially understand that given the context of this wording around the preferred vaccine versus a not preferred vaccine. This has like a very specific scientific meaning and then also kind of a very slightly different colloquial meaning. And when we feel like, okay, you told me to go get a vaccine and I got a vaccine that you said maybe wasn't preferred and now you're saying not to get it at all. What did you actually want me to do? And that's completely understandable and kind of a logical conclusion to draw from what has happened. The best I can say here is if it were me, I would have been really happy to get the AstraZeneca vaccine. And if it were still available today, I'd still probably get it today if it were available to me. The risk of the blood clots is quite a bit lower for the second dose of AstraZeneca. So hopefully the people who've already had one dose of AstraZeneca, you're already out of the woods and you'll be able to get a second dose, fingers crossed, later this summer.
So, Tim, let's talk about risk because I think when people did hear the news, and I posed the question on Twitter, would you still get the AstraZeneca vaccine for your second dose, knowing what you know now? And people are saying, I'd rather take the risk of getting the vaccine as opposed to exposing myself and my community to the potential of getting COVID. So, how much of this story, Tim, is about risk analysis?
It's actually more concerned with risk perception. We do the analysis very well, number crunching, there's no shortage of that. But the important thing is perception. Perception is everything. As a teacher, even, it's very important to be able to put yourself in the back row and that little person who's wondering why you should even be there, and to say, what I've just said, how did that how was that received by that person? Did it make sense? And in this particular case, some of the good analysis probably confused people rather than helped relax them a little bit.
In what
We
ways?
have, well, we have two reactions to knowing about risk. One is an immediate aversion. We need to run, take ourselves and run away. The other is a more of a calm, relaxed analysis approach. But unfortunately, the immediate reaction kicks in straight away. And so if they hear something, even any risk, doesn't matter what the size, doesn't matter how many zeros there are on the size of the risk. If there's a risk there, let's go the other direction. And so, yeah, they did the right thing. You and I, many of my family have taken the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I would still encourage them today. It's a remarkably good vaccine. It's probably better than we would have suspected at the end of the phase 3 trials. But it does have this small. Remember, 4 weeks ago is not where we were last week. 4 weeks ago, all the indicators were going in the wrong direction. Everything was looking pretty bad. Hospitals were getting ready for triage, something we didn't ever expected we would be in. In the last 7 days, things have changed quite dramatically. And so the analogy is a little bit like the ship is now moving toward the rocks. We probably will hit the rocks at some point. Grab a life belt. Doesn't matter whether it fits perfectly. Doesn't matter whether the whistle's blowing, but grab any life jacket. That was the good advice back then. Now, we've negotiated around them. The risk of hitting them is a little bit less. We can say, okay, choose a really good life jacket, make sure it fits properly and the whistle works. Different message, and it was appropriate at the time to say that.
You mentioned that this is more about perception of risk perception. Are we as human beings naturally good at risk analysis, or is it something that we need to be taught?
We in Canada have done, we've produced some of the best risk analysis people, but we haven't really done, and nor has anybody else in the world done a really good job at risk communication. And of course, we have to understand the risk perception before we get to the communication part. And there's a long literature in this, and I'm particularly interested in how we've done. If we look back at some of the mistakes that were made for 2003 with SARS-1, and look at how Justice Campbell wrote that wonderful report in 2006, he said, should Ontario be faced with another health hazard in the same way, let's hope we don't make these following 7 errors. And unfortunately, we seem to have made the same mistakes again. We haven't learned much from them, and many of those were perception problems as well. Yeah, so perception is everything.
Perception is everything. And Dr. Miller, something that's been talked about during this pandemic is that family doctors haven't been involved in the vaccine rollout. So when we talk about risk analysis, the people who know us best, perhaps with our health, we haven't been able to engage with them in the same way. Do you think that the government missed an opportunity?
So I think it's unfair to say we haven't been involved. We weren't involved in the planning, who and when and how, but we've been very involved in all of these risk conversations. I don't have a clinical appointment these days that doesn't involve a conversation about vaccine in some way. But certainly we are the experts in talking to the patients we know about their risk and their context. The numbers, which are a big part of it, how the world is changing, which is a big part of it, but also what risks are you more comfortable with and not more comfortable with. Would you rather stay on the sinking ship than take a faulty life belt? Do you care about the color of your life belt? There's many factors that come into risk decision that aren't just the numbers, that aren't just the pure science, but also who you are, what you worry about, what decisions you've made in the past, and what's important to you. And we've been doing that all the way through, and certainly a lot of it in the last week for people who either had AstraZeneca or now don't know what to do with AstraZeneca not available.
Okay, so just to follow up with that, then how do you explain risk analysis to your patients in a way that they can understand when information changes so much?
So part of it, I think, is explaining how the information has changed, right? Why is it different now than it was 8 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago? Why we have an alternative that we might not have had. So all of that, giving them a sense of why the changes has happened so they get more confidence in the change, that the science was good. I agree with the recommendation to pause AstraZeneca, but why do I agree? And why did you make a good decision a month ago when you chose to get it? So helping explain the change and the reason for the recommendations, helping give analogies to other things. So whether it's the lifeboat analogy or decision making whether to go out when there's a weather forecast that has a 20% chance of rain, giving them a sense of how they do risk assessment in their life all the time. And giving them analogies, and then helping them figure out what are the factors that matter to them most. Is it safety? Is it efficacy? Is it timing? And then obviously putting it in their context. Can you protect yourself from COVID, or do you have to go to a job where you fear that you're going to be exposed? Because that changes your risk, and that changes your priorities for risk assessment.
And Maria, something we've been hearing a lot about how we're going to get to a point where, as communities, we're safe is this concept of herd immunity. And I think for a lot of us, the first time we might have heard it is when Boris Johnson was saying that was how the UK was going to deal with COVID-19. And most experts seem to think that it was a bad strategy. Now we're hearing that we're aiming to get to herd immunity through vaccination. What does herd immunity entail? And can we actually get to that point through vaccination?
This is a great question. So herd immunity basically is, let's say that I can't be immunologically protected against a pathogen. So I'm technically at risk, but every single person I interact with that could give that pathogen to me is immunologically protected, so they can't give it to me. And so that means that I'm protected. So that's kind of where herd immunity comes in. We kind of have this kind of synergistic effect, this community effect where we're protecting each other because most of the people within the community are protected. You can get that from a vaccine. You can also get it, in theory, from natural infection of certain diseases. The reason
So if
why
you
a lot
get
of
COVID-19, then you're kind of create a herd immunity in that way?
it's possible, and the reason I say in theory is that first of all, we know with some coronaviruses that your immunity against that coronavirus that caused maybe a milder illness goes away after a while, and so we don't know how long your immunity might last. We don't know how robust it might be, and we also know specifically for COVID-19 and for SARS-CoV-2, it can cause this really, really serious, severe disease, and it doesn't just pose a problem to you, it also poses a problem to the healthcare system. And that poses problems to other people who might be seeking care because they were in a car crash or because they had a heart attack. And so there are these kind of like these community level risks. So the reason why a lot of epidemiologists push back against the idea of herd immunity from natural infection is that it posed too much of a threat, first of all, to our communities. It was a huge number of preventable illnesses and deaths, which is really antithetical to epidemiology. And it really sort of would have shook the very foundation of our healthcare system, and that's just not acceptable risks. When we talk about vaccines, we do know that herd immunity is possible to achieve for some vaccines, and we think that it is likely possible to achieve for COVID-19 if we still have remaining very high vaccine effectiveness against circulating variants. Existing evidence suggests that that may be the case, but we do need to know more. And if we get very, very high uptake of those vaccines.
So lots of ifs, and Tim. And so if we don't get to all the ifs, what happens then? What happens if we don't reach herd immunity?
Well, if you look at what's happening in India right now, treatment and the appropriate attention is just not able to be given to most of these people. So you're seeing what would happen if you just let the pathology carry on doing its normal routine and hoping we will get to herd immunity. It's the way that all pandemics and epidemics eventually end. there was a common misunderstanding. It was some kind of a policy that you could bring. It's not a policy, it's a natural progression. But what you see in India is what would happen if you just let it go. There were people saying, just like let everybody become infected, and if they survive, they survive. If they die, and whoever will be left will be immune. Well, that's a very clumsy way of doing it. That's what actually happened in in the 1918, because we didn't have treatment or tests or anything else. But now we have vaccines to the rescue. So this is the way to go. So we need to reach that. And we have seen it's wonderful to see the public now talking about things that epidemiologists were keeping to themselves, like herd immunity, transmission threshold, and so on. But we've had to see a change, an increase in herd immunity because of the variants. The original one, we were aiming, doing the calculation, somewhere around 61%, give it roughly, very roughly, of the community would need to be immune to stop the thing spreading. Now that's boosted up to the low 70s now with the new, but we can still get there. We're moving toward that.
Maria, Tim mentioned the variants. Why is the speed of immunization important when it comes to herd immunity?
The way that I like to think about this, and I hope this is helpful for listeners and viewers, is the reason that you want to invest in like a retirement account earlier on. The same amount of money that you invest earlier on is worth way more at the end than that same amount of money when you invest it 10 or 20 years later. And the reason for this when we come to public health is that the number of illnesses you can prevent today means that you prevented double that number of illnesses in the following week or in the duplication period. The fewer transmission events that we have, the less likelihood that we have the emergence of new variants of concern. And the fewer cases that we have, the more resources we have to sort of zero in on the cases that do need investigation, that do need contact tracing. So we really are benefiting so much from attacking this as much as possible, as early as possible.
Dr. Miller, as a family doctor, what role does vaccine hesitancy play in our ability to the patients that you see? How do you talk to them about that? And have you heard from your patients who might be more hesitant to get a vaccine after this pause in the AstraZeneca announcement?
So I think most of us are seeing that the majority of our patients are really eager for vaccination, right? It's been a hard, long year. They know that vaccines is one of our best ways out of it. All of us have a really small group of people that I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to talk into vaccines. And that's the good thing about herd immunity is we don't have to get 100% vaccinated, just a large majority of us. And then I have a lot of patients, and I think all of us are seeing this, that are on the fence. They want a vaccine, but they're anxious about the vaccine. They have questions or hesitancy because they're worried it's happened too quickly, because AstraZeneca has definitely made everyone a little more apprehensive, although it's actually made them really keen about Pfizer, which is what we have available right now. So in some ways, it's pushing them to say, oh, well, now that I know I won't get AstraZeneca, I'm going to sign up because I don't have to worry about getting the wrong vaccine. So those are the people where those conversations around risk, where we're challenging the myths, whether we're doing it in one-on-one or through media interviews or on Twitter or our family practice websites, to really address those people that are eager to have a vaccine but have questions or worries, and set them aside so that they get the vaccine.
I think a lot of people watching this and listening to this want to know when are we going to reach herd immunity? And Tim, you said that we are going to. I'm not going to ask you to look into a crystal ball or anything, but we're year 2 of this pandemic, and I don't know. There's so many. I think people have more questions now than they did at the beginning. I could be wrong, but when do you get a sense of like when we would be able to reach herd immunity?
It's been, my calculation, 423 days we've been living under this dark cloud. But I heard this morning some excellent, we need some excellent news, some good news. And I heard something today from Dr. Bonnie Henry in BC, and I think should be echoed across the country, that in the last couple of weeks, the people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19, 98% were not vaccinated at all. 1.7% had one shot, and 0.2% had both shots. In other words, the overwhelming evidence is right there in front of us that the vaccine works, and it is the way out of this mess. Now, what we have to avoid doing is the mistake that unfortunately we've seen in this country and all around the world, is when we begin to relax the restraints too early and too soon. It's still not beyond the realms of possibility. We could get another variant which transmits as effectively as the 117, the one we're dealing with now, but also has increased pathology, lethality, and also avoids vaccines. That could happen at any point. So let's carefully stay the course that we're on, because the course we're on is the right course, and it's the rapid way to get out of this mess.
Maria, the CDC announced this week that fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks anymore, and that's indoors and outdoors. What do you think of that decision?
I think it's a really interesting decision. There's a lot of conversation happening about whether you should feel free to take a mask off, and whether you should perhaps pressure people who are still wearing masks to take them off now that they don't need to. My take on this is that pandemics don't end with a bang. We don't just wake up one day, suddenly the pandemic is over. They really end with a whimper. And what we've seen, from every other infectious disease that epidemiologists have tried to prevent, the last inch is just as hard as the first 100 miles. And so in my perception, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with continuing to wear a mask and continuing to be cautious. And while sort of using the knowledge that people have learned over the course of this pandemic, their understanding of herd immunity, their understanding of vaccine-mediated protection, their understanding of transmissibility and contagiousness, those are really good tools that we have now. And I hope that people do feel comfortable using them as much as they feel comfortable saying, you know what, I know the CDC said what they said, but I'm just going to still wear a mask for a little bit, and that's okay too.
Dr. Miller and Tim, I saw both of you nodding. Dr. Miller, what do you make of that decision?
I think there's a lot of risk in it from the perspective of relaxing too quickly, feeling like we're in the clear before we are, right? But it's true, there's not going to be fireworks to tell us this is over. I am fully vaccinated. I'm well past my second dose. I am still wearing a mask everywhere where I am in the same room as someone else, both because I want to continue to protect myself. I need to stay healthy. I made it this far. I don't want to get COVID now, but also because we're not enough of us fully vaccinated for it to be safe yet, and we're a long way from fully vaccinated. Second doses, we make different decisions here in Ontario than they did in the US about timing of that. And so if we all stay the course, as Tim said, we can get to the end of this much faster, much easier than if we relax too quickly. We've seen already how poorly that goes.
And Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with my colleagues. Remember that the public is still possibly thinking these vaccines are, as we became familiar with polio and measles and mumps, which essentially infer a lifetime protection. Think rather like the influenza vaccine, which maybe lasts a year, or if you work with animals, the rabies vaccine, which you need to take every year or two, or tetanus, you need to booster every 10 years. This is not one of those lifetime things. So that's one aspect to think of. Secondly, I think every surge has followed a too rapid, too hasty, too clumsy removal from the surge before. We saw it in Melbourne, we've seen it in India, we've seen it in Britain, we've even seen it recently in Singapore. They've done very well up to now. So we've got to hold this course and not, I think the idea in the States is perhaps a little too hasty. I'd hate to think that they get into a fourth wave, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
I think there's so many things to factor in because children under a certain age can't even get vaccinated yet. But I think there's a lot of envy on this side of the border about what's happening in the States. When you look back on the last year or even the last 3 months, what would you change if you could? Maria, I'll start with you.
What would I change if I could? I think the thing that has been true throughout this entire pandemic for me is that I want people to see the importance of investing in healthcare infrastructure. I think, we just as we said earlier, there's a report, we have these guidance documents for Canada, it was post SARS, for the US, it was post H1N1, where we said, okay, this could have been really bad. It was not great, but it could have been a lot worse. Here are these structures that we can implement to prevent this from happening again. And then we didn't follow those structures. I really hope that now that everyone really has public health terms in their vernacular, that they understand the importance of these mechanisms, that we really make a dedication to investing in this infrastructure.
And Dr. Miller?
So I think I'd pick two things. One is improvement around communication, and I think the AstraZeneca pause is a great example of how sound science does not always get communicated well and creates lots of anxiety that is needed. And I think we have to recognize that our population is far more educated about this than any time before, right? That we are all now armchair epidemiologists. And the second thing I think is impatience and complacency. Our third wave was not necessary. We got to the point where we thought, see, we've done this. We figured it out. We relaxed too early. We paid the price. And I think the whole herd immunity vaccine conversation, we have a risk of doing that again. And I really hope we don't.
And Tim?
Okay, I'll just point out that we've seen 3 coronavirus events in the world in the last 20 years, SARS-1, MERS, and SARS-2. There will be others. I just hope that we learn from this one, especially in being prepared. We're at about 3.7% fully vaccinated in this country, way down the list, about 40th position in the world. The US is about 40% fully vaccinated, 10 times better. We got to be better prepared.
Tim, Maria, and Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your time. I can say you're excellent communicators and your messaging came through. We do really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks very much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.